We're in the midst of the story of the Mishkan in Shiloh. Shmuel has just been told is a great prophet of Israel, while the past prophet, his teacher, Eli, is unaware truly of what's going on, doesn't properly rebuke his sons. And that is where we continue with the reputation of Eli's sons continuing to go down, God warning Eli that his family will be removed from being the Kohanim LaHashem, and Shmuel just increases in his devotion to God and the respect and admiration that Bnei Yisrael have for him. So beginning the chapter 4, Vayhi Dvar Shmuel l'chol Yisrael, Vayisei Yisrael l'krat plishtim la'milchama, Vayachanu al ha'even ha'ezer, u'plishtim chanu ba'afek. So Shmuel's word all over Israel. Everybody knew who Shmuel was, is that he was a prophetic, right? We saw in the previous chapters how the lamp of God was waning, how there was very little oil left in it. Now with Shmuel, everybody knows that God is communicating with the Jewish people. And maybe because of that, they have confidence to go to wage war against the Philistines. Vayarchu plishtim lakrat Yisrael, vatitosh hamelchama ve'inagef Yisrael leflei plishtim vayaku b'maracha basadek arba'at alafim ish. However, in this battle, the Philistines are victorious, and 4,000 members of Bnei Israel die in battle. So despite the fact that Shmuel once again has prophecy, they are not able to be victorious. Vayavo ha'am el ha'machaneh, vayomru ziknei Yisrael, lama nikfanu Adonai hayom lefnei plishtim. Nichai elenu mishilo et aron brit Adonai, vayavo b'kribbenu v'yoshenu mikaf oveinu. So what do the elders say? They say, why did we lose? We must bring the ark with us when we go to battle against the Philistines. And then God will help us from there against our enemies. And here a critical mistake is mentioned, right? The chapter begins by telling us that the word of Shmuel was well known, that God was communicating with Shmuel. But here in verse 3, do they go? Do they ask Shmuel? Do they consult with him about why things went wrong, what the problem was? No, they just make a decision to bring with them the Aron Brit Hashem, the Ark of the Covenant, and that will save them. They see this as some sort of a lucky charm, some sort of a rabbit's foot, or right, this is going to somehow help us in this way. And that's what they do. Verse 4, Pasuk Dal, Vaishlach ha'am Shiloh, Vayisu misham et Aron brit Adonai, tzvaot yoshev hakruvim, v'sham shnei vnei Eli im Aron brit Elohim Chofni uPinchas. And so the troops sent to Shiloh, where Eli's two sons, we know that they are Bnei Blial, these are bad men, and they're in charge of the ark, and they bring down the ark from there. And right to how the ark is described, right? The ark that is the ark of the covenant of Hashem, the Lord of hosts, the Lord of war, the one who sits enthroned on his kruvim. It's telling us how great the ark is. And that's why Bnei Israel believe that the ark of the covenant is going to bring them victory. But we know they're together there with Chofni and Pinchas, these two terrible men. So how great can the ark be when these are the people who are, quote unquote, holding it up? When the ark enters the camp of Israel, all of Bnei Israel, they shout out with great joy. They think they're going to be winning this war, and the earth is sort of is resounding. Also, it's like trembling because of all the noise that they're making. Vayishmu plishtim et kol haTorah, vayomru mek kol haTorah gdola zot b'machaneh Ephraim, vayadu ki Aron Adonai ba el hamachaneh. And the Philistines wondered what all these sounds, all this cheers, all this noise was coming out, and they say, oh, the ark must have come to Bnei Israel, to their camp. Vayruplishtim ki amru ba Elohim el hamachaneh. And the Philistines were scared because now God has come to their camp. Vayomru oy lanu ki lo hayta kazot etmol shalshom. They say, we are in trouble because this has not happened in the past. They never had their God with them when they went to battle. Their God was back in Shiloh in their temple, but now their God is in their midst, and we are in trouble. Continuing verse 8, Oy lanu mi yatzilenu miyad Elohim ha'adirim ha'ele elu ha'im ha'elohim ha'makim et Mitzrayim b'chol makah b'midbar. Woe to us, who's going to save us from the power of this mighty God? It's the same God who struck the Egyptians with every kind of plague in the wilderness. Hitchazku, they say to each other, be chazak, be strong. Vayula anashim plishtim. and be men. Stand up. Penta Abdullah Ivrim Kasher Abdullah Chem Va'iti Lanashim V'nilchamtem. We don't want to become slaves to the Hebrew as they were slaves to you. Fight with all your strength so that we can overcome the God of Israel, who is in now their midst. Va'elchemu plishtim va'inagef Yisrael va'yanusu ishlo alav v'tiyah makah gdola ma'od va'yipol Yisrael shloshim elef ragli. And the Philistines fight and they rout Israel. The Israelites are running from the battlefield. They're being defeated, and 30,000 soldiers fall there. The first battle was considered a terrible failure when 4,000 soldiers died. Now, in the second battle, with the Ark of the Covenant, with the Aron there, 30,000 soldiers die. It's a much worse battle. The Aron Elohim nilkach, and the Ark of God is taken by the Philistines. They have the Aron, they have the Ark of God with the staves on top, built by Bitzalel at the order of Moshe, right? The box, wooden on the inside, gold on the outside. It contains in it some most important objects of Jewish life, the luchot and the broken luchot, the jar of mud. Ushnei vnei Eli metu, Chofni and Pinchas. And as we were told in the last chapters, God telling Eli that his family will be cursed, and you will know it because your two sons, Chofni and Pinchas, will die on the same day. And that is what happens on this day in this battle. And the men of Binyamin, they run from the battlefield. When they come to Shiloh on that day, Umadav kiruim ba'adama al rosho. They run and they reach Shiloh, but this one man from the tribe of Binyamin, his clothes is torn. There's earth on his head, right? There's ashes on his head. He's in mourning because of the terrible rout. This one person who runs back to Shiloh. Vayavo, v'hinei Eli yoshev al hakisei, yad derech mitzpah. And Eli is sitting on the seat on the road towards Mitzpah. And why was he sitting there? Kiayo libo charad al Aron ha'elohim. Because he was fearful, he was scared, trembling that the Ark of God was taken to the battlefield. And maybe this is another instance where Eli doesn't agree with the decision that are being made by his sons, but he's not able, even though he's officially the one in charge, to keep it in control. His sons want to take the Ark to the covenant, the Aron Brit Hashem, to the battlefield. And he doesn't say no, and he's terrified that something bad is going to happen. And the man, this person from the tribe of Binyamin, we were told, of course, in the end of the last book of Shoftim, how the tribe of Binyamin had basically been removed from the tribes of Israel. Here we have a man of Binyamin representing the destruction, but part and parcel of the war effort of Bnei Israel, even though they're defeated. He spreads the news, and everybody's crying. And Eli hears the crying out. Vayomer mekol hahamon hazan. He says, what is the meaning of this uproar? Why is all this screaming? Vaish miher vayavo vayagei le'Eli. And this young man from the tribe of Binyamin, who is mourning, his clothes are torn. He's torn kriya. He's got the dirt on his head. All signs of mourning. He comes and he tells Eli, the Eli ben tishim ushmona shana. And at this point, Eli was 98 years old. Ve'enav kama v'lo yachol lirot. His eyes were fixed in a blind state. He's unable to see. And it appears that the fact that he can't see is a physical manifestation of where he is spiritually. He can't see all the things his sons are doing wrong. He can't see that, right? And this is years before, that Chana is a woman of great devotion and faith. He thinks that she is some drunkard. He's confusing her as being a woman, a scoundrel, when really his sons are. And so this seems to be here. This is not like Tiresias, the Greek prophet, who is blind and knows everything. Here, this blindness, at least with Eli, seems to be a physical manifestation of his inability to understand what's going on. Vayomer ha'ish el Eli. And the man says to Eli, Anochi haba min hama'aracha. I'm the person who came to the battlefield. Vani min hama'aracha nasti hayom. And I fled from the battlefield today. Vayomer. And Eli says to him, Me haya hadavar b'ni. What happened, my son? Vayan hamivaser. And this is the bearer, the person who was the same man, now he's called a mivaser, which means somebody who's telling news. Vayomer, an announcer. Vayomer nas Yisrael lifnei plishtim. Vigam magefa gdola haita va'am. Israel fled before the Philistines. They suffered a great slaughter, a great defeat, right? We already heard that 30,000 men were killed. He doesn't know the exact number at this time. He can't report that to Eli. V'gam shnei vanecha metu Chofni u'Pinchas. And your two sons, Chofni and Pinchas, also died. V'aron ha'Elohim nilkacha. And the ark of God was taken. And now let's hear Eli's response, and this is important. Vahi kahazkiro et Aron ha'Elohim. When Eli hears the mention of the ark of God, it's not when he hears that Bnei Yisrael have been routed. It's not when he hears that his two sons are dead, but when he hears that the ark of the covenant has been taken, vayipol me'al hakisei acharonit bi'ad yad hashar vatishaber mafrakto vayamot. He falls backward on his chair besides the gate and he breaks his neck and dies. Kizakenaish, because he was an elderly man, v'chaved, and he was heavy. And here it means he was physically, he was large, he was fat. V'ushafat Israel arba'im shana, and he had judged Israel for 40 years. And I think part of the idea, we talked about the words kaved versus kal. Kal is something that's light, that's unimportant. Kaved is something that's heavy, that's weighty, that's important, right? And he took certain things in a weighty way, but he didn't take the right things. And this is implication of what he said earlier in the chapter, 2 chapters ago, when he said to his sons, what is this bad news that I'm hearing? If you sin against God, nobody can help you. If you sin against man, God can give you expiation. He's more concerned about the sins against God than he is the sins against man. He's less concerned about the fate of his sons than he is the fate of the Aron, the fate of the ark. The ark is God's ark. God will be okay. What are you concerned about God? You should be falling off your chair when you hear Bnei Yisrael's routed, when you hear your sons are going to die. And Eli is somebody who is blind. He doesn't have the right perspective. At the end of his life, he's grown through his blindness. He doesn't see what is going on. And this is part of what's going on in this chapter. We have a couple of different, more verses, but one of the ways what this chapter is about, and these chapters are about, is this is a corrupt society. Shiloh, even though it's the place that's housing the Aron, it's the Mishkan, according to Chazal, according to the rabbis, it stood for 369 years. It's a place that has become corrupt. And even though Shmuel, this great prophet, has appeared on the scene, God says, we need to start over. Shmuel, right, the son of Hannah, is an outsider coming from the outside. Even though he's trained in Shiloh, he's not of Shiloh. This is not his home. This is not his spiritual home. This place is corrupt. It is devoid of goodness. And God says, we need to start over. And so Shiloh is destroyed. Let's continue with the end of the chapter. It doesn't get much better. The Chalato Eshet Pinchas Hara Laleit. And Pinchas's wife was pregnant, and she was about to give birth. And she hears that the ark was taken, and her father-in-law and her husband were dead. The labor pains overcome her, and she gives birth. She dies in the process of giving birth. And she says to the women attending her, and the women attending her say to her, don't be afraid, you have born a son. But she can't respond or pay any heed. She's so overcome with grief. And she called the child Ichabod. And what does it mean, Ichabod? Lemor gala kavod mi Yisrael. The E means that there is not. Kavod means glory, right? There is no glory in Israel. The glory of Israel has departed. Ali lakach Aron ha-Elohim bi'el chamiha v'isha. She calls this child Ichabod. I chavod. There is no glory. The glory of Israel has departed. Her father-in-law, the prophet, the priest, the judge of Israel is dead. Her husband is dead. The ark has been taken. Vatomer. And she said, the glory from Israel has been taken, for the ark of God has been captured. And this chapter is the first. We know that, of course, destruction of the two Batei Mikdash in the future, but this is the first, and I should say also the exile of the 10 tribes. This is the first true disaster for Bnei Israel in their land. This is where something, an institution that has stood for years, has been destroyed. The Ark of God has been taken. There seems to be no relief from this. And the people there realize at the time how terrible it is, and they feel that they have been abandoned by God. They feel that's the way that they feel, but it's because their temple, the place that you should meet God, has been transformed due to the lack of understanding of Eli, due to the wickedness of his sons, has been transformed from a temple to a place of horror spiritually. And so God says, we're destroying this, and we're going to, in a sense, start over. And that's what's going to happen with the leadership of Shmuel. And again, I've said it multiple times, Shmuel represents the outsider. His mother Chana, a woman in a man's world, she's praying, she's not understood. Shmuel, her child, is not from the family of leadership, he's from the outside. And it's going to take somebody from the outside to come and to bring Bnei Israel back to their previous glory.